there, it's lovely that you could join us. Welcome, I'm Paul Rotherham, and this is another edition of the Coaching Hour. We call it a podcast, although obviously it's visual as well. If you're watching this, nice to see you, although we can't see you, you can see us. Good to have you here for another of our sessions where we bring in a guest who is operating in the coaching space. That's what this show is all about. And of course, coaching is so diverse that we've got a wonderful array of guests to look forward to bringing you. We've already brought you some incredible guests and we'll continue to do so. If you have any suggestions, by the way, if you are in the coaching world, maybe you would like to feature on this show, we'll tell you how to go about that at the end of this episode. I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Marika and Mary. Hello, ladies. Lovely to have you here. I feel like I am the thorn among the roses once again. I stand to be corrected, Marika, but I think we have female guests more often than we have male guests. Quick question, are there more female coaches operating than there are men?
Correct, Paul. Good observation. Yes, you are usually the thorn between roses, and it is true, there's more female coaches these days. But I think we should maybe change that up a bit. I will make it my mission to find more partner in crime for you during our sessions as well.
Wonderful.
Great.
Then we'll have two thorns and two roses. But I'm going to hand over now to you as one of our roses to introduce today's guest and a lovely lady who is no stranger to the Coaching Hour.
Good. Thank you, Paul. Yes, we have once again, for the second time, we have Dr. Loretta Ferrucci, and she's a registered homeopath and owner of Your Ideal Body. And we are going to talk about the link between burnout and your passion. But before we start, Loretta, please just quickly tell our listeners, who is Dr. Ferrucci and what do you do and why are you passionate also about this topic?
Thank you, Marika. Thank you for having me. So as Marika says, I am a homeopath. I'm a registered homeopath. I was in private practice for 27 years, and my niche is working obviously with health. During that time, I got more and more interested in what the unconscious patterns are, the unresolved traumas and the suppressed emotions and the energetic causes behind disease, because I found that with my patients, merely changing their diets and lifestyle often wasn't enough. I no longer work as a homeopath. I work as a transformational health coach online. I do work sometimes as a homeopath. I run a community project in a rural area outside East London called Cooler Natural Health, Eastern Cape, where we employ 2 young homeopaths and 4 members of the community, and we service the community for 1 week out of every month. So that's my toe that I'm still keeping in the homeopathic world.
Wow, I didn't even know that about you. You didn't mention that before. Fascinating. So today we're talking about burnout, which is something that I hear more and more often, most of my clients actually, if I can be honest. Most people are suffering from burnout, and there's an array of reasons, obviously, why people are suffering from burnout. But today we are going to talk about the link to our passion or our purpose. If you can enlighten us on what you mean by that.
Thank you. So I think we first have to define purpose, because I don't have a unique definition of purpose, but I think we just need to be clear about what purpose actually is. So I believe that our purpose is not necessarily the work we do in the world. Many people have a different purpose to the work they do, but your purpose is the fullest expression of your spirit in the world, your unique spirit, and that part of you that is limitless. All right. And so when we align with that part and when we make choices based on that part of ourselves, then we start bringing the most unique expression of ourselves into the world, which means we're less concerned about what other people think and how things should happen and what we should be doing and what we ought to be doing. So whenever we use imperative language like I must, I need, I ought, I should, I have to, what we're actually saying is that we are trying to conform to some outside standard. So, so when you connect to your purpose, then you are the most unique expression of yourself. And very often what flows out of that can be the work that you do in the world. So why this is linked to burnout is because we have 2 different parts of, we have many streams of consciousness. We just talk about 2 particular streams of consciousness. We have the spirit that I call our spirit, or your higher self, or some call it your super conscious. It's that part of you that's not limited in this dualistic reality, all right? It's the part that's most aligned with your soul, I suppose, if we want to use sort of spiritual kind of language. And then we have our ego. And our ego is really important because without an ego, you can't operate in the world. So my ego made the notes for this podcast and is allowing me to speak in alignment with my spirit, right? So what happens is that we either have our focus on our spirit, the choices that we want to make from our spirit, or we have our focus aligned with our ego. Now, our rational mind is also part of our egoic reality. And when we are living according to our ego, then we actually start living a limited existence because our ego develops in the first 3 years of our lives. And our ego is the map of reality. It orients us in the world. So when you're born as a newborn baby, you have no idea how this works, right? You have no concept of how the world works. And so babies are very self-centered. So, babies are either crying or they're okay. They don't have like a little babies. There's no middle ground with them, right? They're either on or off. And so babies interpret everything that happens around them, not cognitively because their neocortex isn't fully developed, but emotionally. And it's all about them. So for example, let's say the baby's crying and the mom is about to come to the baby in the cot and her phone rings and it's a really important call and she takes the call. The baby doesn't have the cognitive capacity to go, don't worry, she's just taking a call. It's really important that she takes this call. She'll be here now. The baby is like, she's not coming. What does this say about me? I'm not worthy. What does it say about other people? Other people's needs matter more than mine. And maybe what does it say about the world? Well, the world is uncertain or unsafe. And so you form this little fragment, which becomes your map of reality. And every time you have a need that's unmet or a trauma, essentially you build another part of the map. And that map becomes your filter of reality. And that map is really important because it helps you negotiate your way through the world. The problem is that your ego leads you to believe that your purpose is to cover up what's wrong with you or fix it. So if you're constantly focusing on fixing one of these fundamental limiting beliefs, which incidentally you can't fix and you can't change, and I'll tell you why you don't want to, then you're focusing on what's wrong. And ultimately, your focus creates your reality, which means that now you're operating from this fear-based, got to keep safe, can't step outside of the boundaries, have to do what will keep us safe, which is ultimately what the authority figures in the world tell you, whether that's your parents, your culture, your job, your corporation, your religion, it doesn't matter, all right? And so you start living in more and more narrow confines and you become less and less able to express your unique soul expression in the world. So these limiting beliefs act as our filters of reality. So what we do is we compensate. So now let's just say I have a belief of I'm unworthy. The compensatory strategy is to be good. So that baby goes, every time I cry, and she gets really stressed and very upset. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to cry so much anymore because my job is to keep my primary caregiver happy so that she doesn't reject me, because if she rejects me, I die. Okay. I mean, I don't know that this actually goes through a baby's mind, but just imagine that that's possible. So what happens is we have a coping strategy. So we develop a coping strategy. And the most common coping strategy for I'm unworthy is to be good. It's to become a good person, do good things, be the good child, the good girl. And every time you are good and an adult validates that and goes, oh, I really love Loretta, she is my good child. It reinforces that good is what gets me loved and keeps me safe, right? So, and because being a good person does actually get me stuff, it gets me stuff. That's why you don't want to get rid of it, because a compensatory strategy has benefits and it has drawbacks. The problem comes in is that when this stuff is all happening unconsciously, which it is for most people, it's running you on autopilot. You have no choice but to be good. You have no choice but to put the needs of others before you. And so when you do that, you get all the kudos for being a good person and you create lovely things in your life. But you, for example, don't have clear boundaries. And so people take advantage of you. You say yes when you should be saying no. You don't know how to say no. You can't assert yourself. For some people, it really means becoming a victim. You become a victim of emotional abuse or exploitation or whatever the case may be. So we are either living in alignment with that reality. Most people, and by default, that's how we live. So if we don't know this, this is what's running the show. If we do know it and we recognize the belief and the strategy, when I say yes, this is actually not my limiting belief, but when I say yes, when actually I'm completely overstretched, I'm overtaxed, and I just don't have the capacity, but I don't want to displease the person, and I say yes anyway. If I recognize that, I might go, hey, Loretta, was that a compensatory strategy you just pulled? Yes. What is it that you really want? Well, what I really want is rest. So is saying yes to this going to help you? No, it's not. It's actually just going to burn me out even further. And that's literally how we burn ourselves out. Okay. So what happens in your physiology is you have a part of your nervous system called your autonomic nervous system, which runs all the automatic functions of your body. So everything you don't have to think about, digestion, ovulation, cell death, neurotransmitter production, elimination, detoxification, essentially your autonomic nervous system runs all of this. And so it runs your endocrine system, your hormones, it runs your neurotransmitters, your brain chemicals, it runs your immune system, and it runs your neurology. And your autonomic nervous system is directly linked to your adrenal glands. And your adrenal glands produce your stress coping hormones and the hormones that when you're under huge pressure allow you to get away from a threat. So your autonomic nervous system has two parts. The sympathetic nervous system, which is the one that's associated with alertness. It's more active in the day. It's the thing that keeps you on time. It makes you keep to a schedule. It keeps you accountable. It is associated with oxidation in the body, which is like rust and cell death. And then you have your parasympathetic nervous system, which is more active at night. And it's involved with digestion, relaxation, sleep, reproduction, restoration. So when you perceive life as being incredibly challenging, you're going to have an activation of your sympathetic nervous system. And when you have support, you're going to have an activation of your parasympathetic nervous system. If you are functioning according to the map of reality that says, I don't matter, everyone matters more than mine, and the world is unsafe, and you don't know that that's your operating system, you don't know, you end up creating something called sympathetic dominance. So, because we're so stressed, we're always on our phones, we've got all the news, we know about the latest wars, we know about the economic crisis, we know about everything because it's all coming at us constantly. Most humans are in a state of sympathetic dominance. Now, sympathetic dominance ultimately leads to turning on that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. And that in itself leads to an imbalance between your sympathetic and your parasympathetic nervous system. So now, ultimately, when you start getting signs and symptoms like fatigue, irritability, depression, infertility, lack of libido, insomnia. I mean, honestly, I can name just about all of them. They're almost all, not all of them. There are some diseases associated with parasympathetic dominance also. But essentially, that's how we burn out. Now, we counteract that when we can connect to what is it that our spirit would love to create in this world. So your ego communicates to you via your thoughts and your feelings and your fears. Because the truth is, something comes into your perception, you run it past your filter of reality, you go, this is a good thing, so you have a positive thought, or this is a bad thing and you have a negative thought, right? And so your filter determines how you judge the world. Essentially, consciously or unconsciously, mostly unconsciously for most of us. So what ends up happening is that your ego communicates through your thoughts and your feelings. You think that's the real you. Your spirit communicates through your intuition and your imagination, the part that we get turned off by the time that we're about 3, right? You can believe in fairies and nature spirits and things like that until you're about 3, and then you're not allowed to do that anymore because, your imagination is just too active, okay? So there are ways that we can access our spirit, obviously, and there are ways that we can improve our receptivity to our intuition. Every single human has this capacity. It's got nothing to do with intellect. It's got nothing to do with EQ. It's got nothing to do with social background. It's built in. We all have this. So what happens also further is that in traditional Chinese medicine, I just have to add this little piece, the kidney organ. So first of all, in Oriental medicine, almost all systems of Oriental medicine agree that we have a blueprint. Think of it like like a plan. You know, like you have a plan for your house looks like the plan, right? So we have a blueprint, which is energetic. So, you know, when you're standing in a store and someone you don't know is standing too close to you and you get uncomfortable because they're in your personal space, it's literally because your energy body and their energy, you've got this energy body around you, right? That houses your blueprint. And in Oriental medicine, whether it's Chinese or Ayurvedic or Japanese, it doesn't really matter. They all believe that your organs also have an energetic field around them. So we have what we call an organ function energy. So when I say kidney organ function energy, I'm not only talking about the physical kidney, talking about the energy of the kidney, all right? So in Oriental medicine, the kidney organ function energy governs the health of your adrenals. So remember, your adrenals produce your stress coping hormones and your stressing hormones, depending on how much challenge or support you're perceiving. And your kidney organ function energy, its predominant emotion associated with it is fear. Deep-seated subconscious fears, survival fears, not enough time, not enough money, not enough security, you know, not enough environment, you know, as in the world's going down the drain because we're going to run out of water or whatever. Those big fears, right, of staying alive are governed and controlled by your kidney organ function energy. And your kidney organ function energy in Chinese medicine, they say that's the reservoir of your life force. Everyone's born with a certain amount of life force. And so the more we live in alignment with this egoic reality, with these fears that keep us playing small, the more we deplete our kidney energy. And the worse our adrenals become. And so what happens is our adrenal glands eventually can't keep up with the production of stress coping hormone. And that's why our stress leads to burnout. Now, when you live in alignment with your spirit, the true essence of who you are, beyond the stories that you've told and the assumptions that you have because of these beliefs that you developed on your own, actually, and everyone has them, then we are living, we transcend this whole idea of support and challenge, actually. And the more we do that, the more our sympathetic and our parasympathetic nervous system work together, because they're supposed to do that. So while we're on the podcast, for me, certainly, my sympathetic nervous system is dominant right now. It's supposed to be, okay? Otherwise, I won't be able to do this. But when I finish this podcast, I'm going to make my breakfast. When I sit down and eat my breakfast, I want my parasympathetic nervous system to be working because it's going to be making the digestive enzymes that are going to enable me to digest and absorb my food. And so when we are living in our egoic reality, because we don't understand what's driving us, then we are constantly oscillating between I'm very stressed or I'm relaxed or I've got to relax. And even when we relax, how many of us can switch off when we relax, right? That's why things like meditation and yoga and qigong and time in nature and contemplative prayer, we all know we should be doing those things because they activate our parasympathetic nervous system. But if you think that even if you do that, if you spend an hour in the morning doing yoga and you meditate for half an hour and you write in your gratitude, let's just say you take 2 hours in the day, right? And you really set the scene, you're going to be awake for another 14. And I can promise you in those 40, if you're eating on the run, you're eating in your car, you're eating in front of your computer, you have a fight at the dinner table with your spouse, your sympathetic nervous system is super active constantly. So the more we can access what it is that our spirit is longing to express in the world, who am I at this level beyond my thoughts and my feelings and my egoic fear, the more our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems start working in harmony. The healthier our nervous systems are, the more resilient we become to stress, the better our endocrine systems work, the better we handle our stress resilience again, and the better our immune system is, the less likely we are to have chronic inflammation and therefore develop chronic diseases. So it's all good and well to have your purpose or passion. But if you are, and a lot of people do, so, you know, listen, by default, a lot of us actually are living in alignment with what we really would love to create in the world. So let's say in our jobs, okay? So I mean, I can guess that all 4 of us here are living in alignment with what we believe to be our purpose. And that's great. But when you are running your business, which you think is your purpose, let's say, or which is your, from the place of your fear-driven ego, you're still burning yourself out. That's why you can do what you love and still burn out, okay? Because your ego is going to say, Mareka and I were talking about this before we started, your ego is going to say, Loretta, if you don't post on social media 5 times a week, no one's going to see you. If you don't grow your client base, no one's going to work with you. If you don't have 3 sales calls this week, you're not going to convert at least one of them, which means your business is not going to grow. So can you hear all these have-tos? These things that I've learned from, let's say, online marketing coaches, not invalid. Hey, I'm not knocking it at all. I'm just saying that when that is not what is intuitively aligned with what the action, the intuitively aligned action. If I'm doing all this, I have to meet all these deadlines, because if I don't meet these conditions, I can never be a successful health coach. Then I am living my purpose from that fear-driven place of my ego. Which is why professionals who love what they do still burn out. And the other reason why that happens also is because your purpose is never just a job. Your purpose is to be the most full expression of your spirit in the world. And that is in every area of life. Now, that does not mean you've got to get an A for every life area. You've got to be rich, beautiful, healthy, gorgeous, wonderful partner, amazing. You could be. If you really were the fullest expression of your life, of your spirit, your life would literally be delicious and lush and inspired and fulfilled. Of course, there would be difficulty. Of course, stuff would happen. Of course, there'll be circumstances, right? But the truth is, your North Star, if you're aligned with that North Star, your bounce back is going to be so much better. And that is so much more valuable, in my opinion, than, building resilience or building confidence. And the last thing I'm going to say, because I know I'm running out of time now, is self-love. We very often talk about self-love. We've got to have self-love. This is what I've learned on my journey working with this way of working is called the creative orientation in some coaching circles, right? What I've learned in this is that the more I align myself with my spirit. And this is hard, because my ego is constantly telling me that if I don't do what I'm supposed to do to cover up my supposed inadequacies, everyone's going to reject me. That means no husband, no family, no children, no business, no money, no nothing. Okay. So it's not like that, just quiets. No. Your ego comes along for the ride because it has to. But what happens, what I've noticed is the more I choose to do what I love, whether it's in my job, whether it's in my relationship, whether it's with my friendships, whether it's with my community project, the more I'm in alignment with my spirit, the more I actually realize that I'm actually amazing at the level of my spirit. My spirit is a beautiful thing. And the more I inadvertently realize, my goodness, the self-love thing just seems to happen on its own. Because I am constantly connected, not constantly, I'm as much as I can connected to what would I love, rather what am I creating, because I'm fearful of the consequence of not having that. And the really good news is this: you don't have to get an A for focusing on your spirit. You only need to be focusing on what you love 51% of the time. 49% of the time, you can have your fears and your inadequacies and your emotional breakdowns. I'm half Italian. The emotional breakdown at least once a week, right? I mean, otherwise life is not happening. It would be very boring. So you can be doing all that 49% of the time. You just have to be doing it 51% of the time, shifting your focus onto what is it that you would love and living according to that. Because when you do that, you have the recipe for ultimately preserving your health to the best of your ability. And the healthier we are, the more resilient we are. It's as simple as that.
Wow, Loretta, I think speaking for myself, and I'm sure I actually speak on the part of everyone who's listening and watching, I think you have probably in the last 20 minutes or so painted a clearer picture in terms of how we fit into this world, sympathetic versus parasympathetic. In 20 minutes, you've created a clearer picture than any book I've ever read, than anyone I've ever listened to. I'm really fascinated, and it's crazy in a way, because we've had you before in this circle, and we've heard you speak, but for some reason today it's just really resonated with me. So I'd like to say thank you for that, because you really have made a lot of sense. And I know we are tight for time, but I think this is a conversation that we could easily extend, Marika, into another 3 or 4 episodes, because with this background that you've given us, what I would love to get from you, and I don't think we have time now, but what I'd love to get from you are some tips and some advice and some real world methodologies, as it were, in how we can do this. Because it's all well and good. You've explained the theory behind it, and it makes perfect sense to me. But I'm looking at this and thinking, wow, how can I apply this to my everyday life? And I'm pretty certain many other people will be asking that same question. So, Marika, I don't know who we have set up for next time, but I'd like to vote for Loretta, please.
Yeah, no,
I vote for
very
Loretta
best.
too.
I'm so glad that we have Loretta's vote because that one is important. No, Loretta, thank you so much. I really, truly think that we should have you for a next session. Like Paul said, and I can listen to you for hours. I mean, it's so fascinating the way that you paint that picture. You can see it and it makes 100% sense. But we would love to maybe go on a journey to how do one transcend from living in this ego space to stepping into expressing, my purpose and getting out of that rat race. Because honestly, most people are so stuck in this stress and anxiety and worries and financial stuff and whatever. So I think it will be awesome to have you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Loretta, I am so intrigued by the way that you explain it, and it just flows like blah, 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 blah. There's no ifs, ands, and buts. And I love that. And you know what? I relate to every single thing that you are explaining. I just don't have the words you have to explain it.
Well, that's one of the unique expressions of my spirit, is to take these metaphysical things and put them all together in a way that is hopefully easy for people to understand.
It is so simple and so down to earth. I mean, it's really not a rocket science.
No, it's not
just
rocket science, Mary. That's why I said everyone can do it. It just, like everything, it takes practice. It's not rocket science to go to the gym and lift weights. But if you don't go 2 or 3 times a week, if weights is what you want to do, you're never going to progress. This is not rocket science. It's just a question of understanding and awareness and then application.
practice.
It is with everything.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Loretta. We will put the links in this video, but it's been wonderful having you, and I will leave it up to our head organizing Rose in the form of Marika to arrange when we'll be hearing from you again, hopefully for the next one, but I don't want to be presumptuous. But thank you so much for your time and your insights. I really found so much value in today's edition of the Coaching Hour. So thank you so much.